Section 3, Note-Taking Study Guide, page 177, the development of European feudalism. We've already studied Japanese feudalism, and we're going to eventually compare those side by side. So let's talk about European feudalism, what it is, and why it developed. First, you have violent time in Europe. This is the main reason that feudalism developed. There was violence. And the most successful, you have invaders, Magyars, Arabs, and Vikings, Vikings being the most successful and most famous. The Vikings came from, if you look on their map, Denmark, Norway, Sweden. That's where the Vikings kind of came from, and they would go into more of the southern countries, into the North European plain, and invade Europe. The nationalities, Scandinavia, Danes, from Scandinavia, the nationalities were Danes, Swedes, and Norwegians. They attacked Britain, Ireland, France, even Germany, and they wanted new lands in a better climate and loot, meaning plunder. Okay, and so a feudal system developed. It's a system of government based on exchange of land for loyalty. So you give me land, I'll give you loyalty. And so a fief is a grant of land. So people own land, they would give it to a lord. Let's say you have this land to work and farm. So you have a vassal, a person who receives a fief and pledges loyalty to the lord. Knights were mounted warriors. Serfs were peasants who were legally tied to the lord's land, and they could not leave. They weren't slaves in the sense that they were owned, but in all actual purposes, they pretty much were. You couldn't leave the land that you worked, no matter what. And so you have a manor. This is self-sufficient state of a medieval lord. And this is the most important part. Is feudalism rose in Europe because the government could not protect people from the Vikings. So local nobles took over. So local nobles would have their self-sufficient estate, their manor, their lands, that would grow their own food and everything they needed, and then they would protect those people that worked there. And the people would work for them because they wanted protection. So important roles of the manor, so this is manoralism really, is peasants, planted and tended the lord's lands and harvested crops. Women spread thread, wove cloth, also worked in the land. Later the manor ran the castle and household, ran the manor when the lord was away, usually defending his land. Lord of the manor judged minor crimes, settled arguments. The bailiff served as a sort of business manager for the manor. And the reeve, this repaired buildings, and oversaw peasants at work. So he was kind of in charge of the peasants, made sure they worked. So this is kind of feudalism generally in Europe during this time period.